Hi guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. As per usual, I have my wicket candle in here, making the whole room smell like caramel apple. And I do have a PR box sent to me from Alternative Cosmetics. So they are a local Edmonton brand. So their storefront is in Edmonton, Alberta, but they do have an online store. So I'm going to link it down in my description box down below so you guys can shop their online storefront if you are interested in some of their products. They are an Alternative Cosmetics brand that does a lot of bath and body work stuff. So the stuff that they sent me is all bath related, but at their storefront in Edmonton, they do sell like cups and candles and tons of bath bombs and a bunch of really cool jewelry, and I love it. They have tons of really cool like artwork and signs and stuff. They also have these amazing cups. They're all Halloween and like spooky themed. So they are one of my absolute favorite stores in the Edmonton area. So if you do live in Edmonton and you are watching my channel from local, you can definitely go to Alternative Cosmetics. I'll put all of the information in my description box down below so you guys can go check them out. But if you're not from Canada, you can always just shop their storefront. So the PR box that they sent me is an alien themed one, and I'm so excited because they are so cool. So look at this alien. This alien is so freaking amazing. It's so adorable. Made this whole theme box for me, and I'm so excited to try these. They all smell really good. Everything smells amazing. They also sent me an alien necklace, so I'm really excited to create a look wearing this. They also sent me a bubble bath, which is alien goop, and it's a body wash bubble bath, and it is this really amazing bright yellow color, and oh my god, it looks so amazing. And they also sent me a foaming bath fizz, which is like a galaxy dust galactic. I'm so excited. I will post videos on my Instagram of me using these products, probably in my stories. So if you guys are interested in seeing how these bath bombs fizz and how the bath dust works, I've never actually tried the dust before. I will post that all on my Instagram stories so you guys can go check it out. But I'll have all the information for this brand in my description box down below. The packaging for this was amazing. They did a complete green and black theme for the alien theme, and I'm so excited. They do also have a bath bomb subscription box, which I believe that this was this month. So you guys can go check out their online store and find all of the information, but they are absolutely amazing, and they are a luxury bath and body company that produces high quality bath and skincare products that are made locally in Edmonton, Alberta. So these are all made locally in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So if you guys love bath bombs and bath salts and fizzes as much as I do, please go check out my friend's store. She is so nice, and I'm so excited that she wanted to work with me and made this amazing box for me. She actually made me a horror theme one as well, but that's gonna be shown in another video, so I'm really excited for that one as well. But I wanted to just quickly talk about this because I am so excited to use these products. So this is not a paid sponsorship or anything. I really just wanted to come on here and show you guys her products because her products are so amazing. I actually got a bunch of her bath bombs last Christmas for my birthday from a bunch of my friends. I also got a really cute cup. I absolutely love these products. They all smell amazing and they fizz really amazing. So if you love bath care products, definitely go check out her brand. And I'm going to jump into these spooky stories now. So I have a bunch of stories from my Reddit that I want to read. I believe that all of the stories that I'm going to read today are from the no sleep section or from the scary story section, but I'm going to clarify obviously in each story that I read. This one is actually from the scary story section. It's also very long, so I'm hoping that this video is longer than my other ones because you guys have mentioned it so many times over that you want me to create longer videos. So I'm going to try my best to create like around the 30-minute mark. So here we go. This one is from the scary story section. It's from the Reddit author Normal Alfalfa 8523, and it's titled, "I went to a local trail for a date. Things aren't what they seem. I made the mistake of sending a risky message several drinks deep on a Saturday night. An ex I dated for 3 years, Claire, was recently divorced, and I'd been trying to work up the courage to reach out. Instead of doing this as a pre-planned, calculated way, I pulled the Hail Mary of randomly messaging and asking her how she'd been. I immediately regretted my choice, panicking as I heard my phone chime. Surprisingly, her response was positive. She let me know that she's been better, but she was doing fine. She seemed open to having a conversation, and we continued to text until I passed out early into the morning. The next day, I woke up, my head pounding and feeling dehydrated. I quickly remembered having a conversation with Claire, but I couldn't recall the details. I looked at my messages, and I felt embarrassed at how much I stumbled over my words. It was clear I was nervous about talking to her again. In my drunken state, I actually worked up the courage to ask her out. Surprisingly, she agreed, and we were to meet at a local trail that night around 7. I did remember her being pretty outdoorsy, so this suggestion made sense. Although I wasn't looking forward to hiking in the heat while hungover, I was very much looking forward to reconnecting with Claire. I knew she hadn't been divorced long, so I wasn't sure what she was looking for, but I was glad I was at least getting a chance to see her again after all these years. I met up with Claire on the trail as planned. I recognized her silver Honda immediately. She stepped out wearing a pair of cargo shorts and hiking boots. Despite it being 5 years since I had seen her last, she didn't look a day over 21. Her shoulder-length blonde hair looked bright as ever, and her green eyes lit up the room just like I remembered. "Hey, Aiden," said Claire, giving me a hug. I didn't have liquid courage backing me up anymore, so I was extremely nervous. We began walking, and luckily, the conversation was easy. Claire didn't talk much about her ex-husband, thankfully. She seemed to be enjoying her post-divorce life. She recently moved to a townhouse and got a new dog, a yellow lab named Baxter. She also told me she left nursing to pursue graphic design like she always wanted. I remembered the arguments with her family when she started college. They put a lot of pressure on her to go into the medical field instead of anything creative. "I'm glad you're finally doing what's right for you," I said. Claire nodded. At some point, the conversation shifted to heavier topics, particularly her brother's overdose a few years ago. I apologized to her for not attending the funeral. She was very understanding, and we settled into a comfortable silence, taking in the scenery. The landscape of the trail was a beautiful mix of woods and prairie. "When do you want to start to head back?" I asked. It was almost 8 now, and it would be getting dark soon. She didn't respond. I wondered if she heard me, and I figured she'd let me know when she was ready, and I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible, so I didn't ask again. I noticed we were past the part of the trail I was familiar with. The trail led us over a hill. When we got to the other side, I noticed the landscape looked different. Despite being in Ohio, it looked like Washington State. Dramatic. Tall pine trees lined the landscape, some covered in moss. The tree line was so dense, we were comfortably covered in shade. I paused and I looked around, but Claire kept up her usual pace, barely seeming to notice. I was surprised I never heard how scenic this part of the trail was. "Damn, this is incredible," I commented, hoping to make conversation. Me and Claire actually talked about taking a trip to Washington many times during our relationship, but never took the plunge. I was always really sad we never got the chance to go. I thought about going on a road trip with friends, but it felt strange to go without her. Claire nodded and continued walking. I paused to take some pictures, and Claire didn't stop to wait for me or even slow down. This kind of annoyed me, but I caught up with her, eager to see more of the section of this trail. We continued walking in silence. The beautiful tree line continued for a good 15 minutes, then seemed to gradually revert back to the normal Ohio landscape. I didn't know what to say at this point. It was clear that Claire didn't want to talk, yet she also didn't seem interested in concluding the hike either. I didn't like the mixed signals. I decided to give her some time before trying to start a conversation. The trees and tall prairie grass seemed to gradually thin out as we continued down the trail. The ground beneath appeared dry and cracked. Eventually, we reached the area that looked like a barren desert landscape. There were even cacti, which anyone in the Midwest knows doesn't grow naturally. "What the hell?" I whispered. I finally broke the silence. "Did you know this was here?" "I didn't. But it reminds me of our trip to Arizona," she said, smiling. I thought back to that trip, smiling to myself. We took the trip our last year together. Even though we were on the rocks at that point, we got along great during the trip, and I thought it would be like a new beginning. Unfortunately, things didn't stay the same once we returned home. I snapped back into reality. I didn't understand how a landscape could change so rapidly. How were plants from the desert climate even able to grow here? Claire was barely reacting to our strange surroundings. I started to worry about her. She seemed despondent. I worried that maybe this was too much for her. It wasn't long after her divorce after all. It also wasn't like she was reconnecting with an old fling. We dated long-term and had a messy breakup. I couldn't even remember the details of what the final argument was about. All I remember clearly was watching her leave and feeling more powerless than I have in my entire life. Eventually, the desert-like landscape gave way to the Ohio landscape I was more familiar with. I stopped for a moment to try to look at the trail to see how far it went. I tried for several minutes but was unable to get cell service. By the time I looked up, Claire was so far ahead I couldn't see her. I was annoyed at this point. Why would she just ignore me when she agreed to come here with me? It was also getting dark at this point, and I was ready to call it a night. I quickly headed up the trail to find Claire. There was a large pond with some trees and a bench surrounding it. The path appeared to end here. "Claire," I yelled, looking around. Claire snuck up behind me, causing me to jump. "What the?" I was cut off by Claire's unexpected kiss. She then took my hand and led me to the edge of the pond. She began taking off her clothes, and as she dipped her feet in the water, she asked me if I wanted to get in. I couldn't believe my luck. Maybe this date was turning around. I stripped down to my boxers and I followed her into the water. We kissed again. Claire then went underwater. I waited, but she didn't come back up. I could barely see since it was almost dark now. I tried to feel around in the water for Claire, and I couldn't find her. I began to panic. I held my breath and I got underwater. I couldn't see, but as I swam around, I felt something touch me. I reached out and I felt a hand grab onto mine. It must be Claire. I was trying to lead her to the surface when I realized the hand was pulling me downward. I pulled it up, but was immediately yanked back down. The grip on my hand tightened. I struggled to get free, almost breathing in the water. Then I heard a strange noise through the water. It was almost like a hissing, or maybe a growling. My arm flew up as I shot to the surface in fear. Something grazed my back and I jumped. I turned around to see a human arm, decaying and detached from the body. It even had a bone sticking out at the end. I screamed and I ran out of the water, falling and tripping over rocks. I began hyperventilating. I called out for Claire several times, but got no response. Had that creepy thing in the water gotten her? I found my phone and I dialed 911. Surprisingly, I got a signal. I frantically talked to the operator, begging them to get someone out here as soon as possible. Officers and the ambulance arrived soon. The first officer who arrived on scene asked for my ID, and I showed it to him. He glanced at it, then back at me. He asked me if I could come with him to the station to answer more questions. I didn't know how to tell him what happened without sounding out of my mind. I was happy to help, but wanted to know if Claire was okay first. He was honest with me that he couldn't give me any answer, but would tell me soon as he knew. I rode with him back to the station as he stepped out for a few minutes to take a call. His facial expressions was noticeably different when we returned. "How did you know Claire?" he asked. I explained to him that we dated our senior year of high school and the first 2 years after. He asked me why we broke up. I sat and I thought for a moment. Embarrassingly enough, I couldn't remember the exact reason, just that we grew apart. I told him that and he nodded. "Did she talk to you at all about her divorce?" "Not really. I didn't think it was my place to ask. Maybe she was still in love with me," I joked. But the officer didn't seem to think it was funny, so I apologized. The officer asked some more strange questions, like where I grew up and what I did for work. Finally, I got frustrated and I stopped him. "Did you find Claire?" He tried to avoid the question, but I insisted. The officer sighed and began talking. "Trevor, Claire's been missing for days. Her high school ex, Aiden, was found dead in his apartment a few hours ago, but his phone, wallet, and several other items were missing. It appeared to be robbery, but then we found out you made threats to him several months ago. You and Claire were divorcing, and you assumed it was because she was still in love with him. Phone records are showing that messages went to Claire from Aiden's phone at a time that was after the time of his death. You lured Claire out to the trail, then murdered her and tossed her body in the pond. For whatever reason, you dressed up in some of Aiden's clothes tonight and called us as him. You must be feeling guilty. Why don't you go ahead and just tell me what happened?" I started shaking. The officer told me to think back a few days, and I did. I was drinking. I was alone. I looked at Claire's profile from a fake account I made. She blocked me immediately after our divorce was finalized. She posted a gorgeous selfie. Tons of thirsty, pathetic guys liked it. I clicked to see the names. Aiden, of course, had. I knew she still had feelings for him. Sometimes I didn't blame her. It's hard to lose feelings for an old flame. That said, I hated hearing about him. When we were moving into our home, I found some hand-painted terracotta pots in one of the boxes. She snatched them from me when I was unpacking them. I kept asking where they were from, and she finally caved. Apparently, she and Aiden painted them during their trip to Arizona. Why she would insult me by still having them, I don't know. Sitting at home alone, I fixated on Aiden more and more. I already knew where he lived. I figured this out months ago. I also figured out his routine. The guy was pretty predictable after all. I watched outside while his lights turned off for the night that Saturday. I entered his apartment with the spare key I had paid to have made by this sketchy maintenance guy. The sedatives I'd laced into Aiden's water jug were clearly working. He didn't stir as I walked into his room. I opened his phone, and I knew him and Claire were having an affair long before the divorce. Shockingly, There weren't any messages between them during our marriage. That didn't mean anything though. I could feel it in my bones that Claire still loved him. I began messaging Claire as Aiden. She quickly agreed to meet up with him that night. I knew it. He was the reason I lost my Claire. Eventually, Aiden began to stir, making me uneasy. So with the help of a phone charger, I made sure he never moved again. Claire looked shocked when she saw me get out of Aiden's truck wearing his clothes. "What the hell?" she asked. "Isn't this who you wanted tonight?" "I'm just being who you wanted all along." I don't remember what happened next, or maybe I just blocked it out. All I remember is walking back from the pond, clothes wet, and my face and arms scratched and bloody. The officer snapped me back into reality, asking why I returned on Saturday. The thing is, I couldn't tell him. It was like I was in a trance, living a life that wasn't mine. The officer placed me under arrest. I still couldn't figure out why I went back. In an empty corner of the room, I saw her, Claire. She was dripping wet, her hair and clothes dirty, and a creepy smile on her face. I stepped back pointing. The officer appeared confused. After I started screaming, I heard him call for backup. I was injected with something, and my eyes became heavy and I closed them. I could still see Claire with my eyes closed. And that's how they ended the story. So that one isn't really paranormal, but it kind of seemed paranormal because of like the decaying creepy arm dragging him out of the pond. That was a very weird story. Like it was very strange to read the very first time that I read it because I was like, what the fuck is happening? It was almost like an alternate reality kind of meets horror meets like true crime. I don't know. It was really freaking creepy. I really liked it. So thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. I'm assuming that's a fictional story because just the layout of that story is definitely not real. But thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. Your story was very well written and I really enjoyed it. So that one wasn't so much paranormal, but it fits the theme of the channel. We're going to move on to the next one, and I think I'll probably will only have time to read one more story because the story is also really long. So this one is from the No Sleep section, and it's from the Reddit author Spaghetti_Mercury, and this one is titled Whispers from the Basement. Meg and I were newlyweds when we moved into our dream home. Newlyweds that are far too young if you ask her parents. My parents are just as surprised I found someone willing to put up with me. We hadn't been dating very long before we took the plunge. The attraction was obvious when we met each other. We immediately clicked and had fun together. We were both doing well financially, and I guess we just figured, why wait? We decided to live our lives rather than planning to eventually live our lives. Another thing that made us confident in our marriage is how much we agreed on things like this. We were simply compatible. So we bought a house. We went straight to our honeymoon after the wedding. We had hired movers to take our things to the new house, which we were ready to move into when we returned. We had a wonderful time in South America, visiting several different places, and we joked about staying there and putting the house back on the market. Maybe we should have. We were bummed that our vacation was over, but excited to see our new house. Just because we were back in the States didn't mean we were done with the vacation. Our first night in our new house was a bit of a blur. Instead of unpacking our things, we got way too drunk and we were still very much in vacation mode. The rest of the night, well, that's private. The next morning, we both felt like death. It was our first morning in our new home together. Neither of us wanted to get out of bed, but not for the same reason as vacation. After a spirited debate, it was decided that I would make breakfast. I stumbled down to the kitchen before realizing that all of our dishes, pans, etc. were still in boxes. I was still looking for them when Meg came down. She found them immediately. We started cooking up a little bit of food we had in the fridge. Meg decided she would help me because, well, I can't really cook. I started wandering around the house, thinking about which things would go where. I pictured what the living room would look like once we got the TV set up. I considered what we might do to the extra rooms. I was most excited about the prospect of building a workshop in the basement. There was a small mudroom between the kitchen and the basement. The basement stairs looked to be in worse shape than the rest of the house. I was about to go down and look around, but the light didn't turn on when I flipped the switch. I added light bulbs to the list of things we needed before sitting down for breakfast. We were both still feeling rough, but our first breakfast together was an exciting thing for us. We were both very fond of firsts. We had previously discussed that we would never get boring and stop having firsts together. We had been experiencing a lot of them in these first few weeks, and it was just perfect, despite our violent hangovers. After breakfast, I volunteered to do the dishes since I didn't end up cooking. Meg went upstairs to get changed. I was about to finish up with the dishes when I heard a noise. It sounded like it was coming from the mudroom. As I approached the top of the basement steps, I heard it more clearly. Psst. Every 20 or 30 seconds, I would hear it. Just a quick little noise that sounded like the noise that you make to get someone's attention. I started backing away as Meg walked into the mudroom. She quickly noticed the uneasy look on my face and asked me what was wrong. I told her to wait and listen, and sure enough, we heard it again. We tried coming up with rational explanations as we listened. Maybe a pipe with a small hole where air was pushing through, maybe a water pipe. I continued to listen as Meg went to grab her phone. She was in another room when I heard the next psst. It wasn't the only thing I heard this time though. Immediately after, I swear, I heard a voice whisper, "Come here." I was immediately terrified and ready to call the cops. I went to look for my phone and a battery-powered lantern that was boxed up in the living room. Meg came downstairs and I asked her to go wait outside. She asked me what was wrong, and I didn't want to tell her, but I couldn't lie to her. I told her about the voice I heard, but she didn't believe me. I told her that I was being serious, but she 100% thought I was just messing with her. She suggested that maybe I was hearing the TV upstairs through a vent or something after I kept harping on about it. She started walking toward the mudroom with a flashlight on her phone. I had just found the box with the lantern in it, and I yelled for her to wait for me as I unpacked it. I took a quick look around for my phone before remembering it was on the kitchen table. I grabbed the lantern and I headed into the kitchen. I felt incredibly uneasy as I walked into the mudroom, and I didn't see Meg at the top of the stairs. She was fearless, and she must have gone down to the basement. I flipped the lantern on and I raced down the stairs in a panic, fearing whatever it was I had heard coming was from down there. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I couldn't believe what I saw. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just a wide open, empty basement with no windows and a cold, musty cement room. I paced along each wall of the basement, even though I could see the entirety of it from the bottom of the stairs. As I started walking, I noticed that I hadn't heard the sound since walking down the stairs. I figured Meg must have gone outside rather than down the stairs. Then I found her phone. I didn't notice it at first because the color is very similar to the floor and it blended in. I felt this dreaded, awful feeling in the pit of my stomach when I noticed that the screen was shattered. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I just saw her with her phone moments prior. I raced upstairs and I ran out the door to see if she was outside. I frantically ran a lap around the house, screaming her name. I ran inside and I did the same. I searched every room in the house multiple times. I continuously screamed her name in a panic as the feeling of dread got worse and worse. There was no sign of her. It was like she vanished into thin air. I ran back down to the basement and I saw nothing. I began pushing at different parts of the walls, looking for some sort of secret pathway that I knew I wouldn't find. I looked for a vent or any other possible place she could have gone, but there simply wasn't anything there. It was just an empty space. There was no hiding spots, no windows, and oddly, no recurring weird sounds. Finally, I had to call the police. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't make sense of what was happening. I anxiously wallowed in my panic attack as I waited for the police to arrive. I wasn't sure if I should call her parents. Maybe it was some crazy misunderstanding. Maybe I blacked out for some reason. It was like I had lost time. I had seen her less than a minute before she seemingly vanished. I paced around the kitchen as I waited. My mind was all over the place. Then something happened, which sincerely led me to question my own sanity. I heard the noise again. I walked over to the top of the stairs and I listened. I heard the noise a few more times in a quicker succession than before, and then I heard the voice. "Come here," it whispered. It was different from the previous time I heard it. I know that because it was Meg's voice. I wouldn't have mistaken my wife's voice. I knew it was her. I brought up the flashlight on my phone and I ran down the stairs. Again, there was nothing. I was stunned. It felt like someone ripped my heart out of my chest. I know it was her. I know what I heard. But she wasn't there. I waited to hear the voice again, but once I was downstairs, I heard nothing. No whispers, no weird sounds, nothing. It was then that I heard a knock at the door. I knew it was the police, but a small part of me just desperately wanted to believe that it was Meg playing a practical joke on me. I knew this wasn't true. I knew that I heard her. I knew that I heard something or someone else before she went downstairs. As you can imagine, the police were very skeptical of my story. I knew that the story didn't make sense, but it's what happened, and I still can't explain it. At first, the police assumed that Meg left. They told me that maybe she was freaking out about rushing into marriage. I knew that wasn't true. They came up with all sorts of different theories that just didn't make any sense. I know my wife. She wouldn't just run off with saying something. As I suspected when I called them, the police eventually turned their attention toward me. They questioned my mental health after I told them what had happened. I tried to explain to them that I understood why they'd think that. They started to wonder if I had done something to Meg. Just the suggestion that I would have makes me crazy. I love her more than anything in the world. We were so happy. Days passed and there was no sign of Meg. The police checked up and down the basement, but there wasn't much to see. They searched the property, but found nothing. It was like she just simply vanished. I blew through my savings pretty quickly over the next few weeks. I hired investigators. I went to meet with anyone who had any sort of theory of what could have happened, from criminologists to paranormal investigators. I was willing to try anything. I also retained a lawyer. I was pretty much the only suspect. I knew the cops would come to the conclusion that I had done something, and I wanted to be prepared. It didn't really happen though. I started to see a therapist to work through the grief and maybe find out if I was losing my mind. The police never found any evidence or any motive for why I would have done anything to her. So at this point, they would have pressed charges. That didn't stop the community from coming to their own conclusion. It's hard to even blame them. A young couple moves into a house, wife disappears. I get how it looks. At this point, I'd love to move out of the house. I can't even go into the mudroom anymore. I don't like being there in general. Problem is, people in the community know what happened, and the value of the house has plummeted. After all that money I spent trying to find her, I'm not financially stable enough to get another place, unless I sell this one, which doesn't seem likely anytime soon. I'm writing this today because it's been 1 year exactly since Meg's disappearance. The police aren't actively investigating it anymore. There were simply no leads. The other reason I'm writing this is because something happened. Ever since that day, I haven't heard any noises in the house. No whispers, no voices. Admittedly, I try to avoid the area of the house near the basement. Just looking at it gives me a feeling of unimaginable dread. Today was different though. I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey. And as I drank, I thought back to the first night in the new house. I thought about what things would be like if she was still here. Maybe we'd be in the process of building a nursery for an incoming child. Maybe it would have been twins. Maybe we'd be celebrating 1 year in our home. Maybe we'd have some candles lit as we ate fast food in a fancy romantic setting like we used to do. I cried as I continued taking nips of the bottle. I looked into the living room where there were still several unpacked boxes from the year prior. I guess I felt like if I unpacked them, I'd be moving in without her. I just wasn't ready to do that. I doubt I ever will be. I eventually stumbled over to the top of the basement stairs. I sat at the top of the floor and I stared down to the basement. I continuously took more drinks of the bottle as I thought back to that day. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard something. It was my name. It was Meg's voice. I couldn't believe it. Moments later, I heard her again. What I heard made my heart sink. "Help me," she cried. I ran downstairs and I looked through the basement yet again. There was nothing there. I felt desperate as I called out to her. Then I ran back up the stairs trying to think of what I could possibly do. And that's when I heard her again. She just repeated the same thing. "Help me, I'm scared." I felt so helpless as I yelled out to her, begging her to tell me where she was and how I could help her. I continuously yelled out to her, hoping she could hear me. Every minute or so, I would hear her say, "Help me, I'm scared." I felt like my heart was being torn out of my chest. Then I heard something else. That familiar sound again. I heard it 4 or 5 times before I heard Meg again. She cried out this time, sounding even more frightened. Then the weird sound quickly followed. I continued to yell back, begging her to tell me where she was. I screamed at the top of my lungs, "How do I get you? How do I bring you back?" Then I heard the other voice whisper, "You don't. She's mine now." I screamed as a feeling of helplessness and dread flooded in. Moments later, I could hear her sobbing. It was Meg. I knew it was. It wasn't long before the sobbing abruptly stopped. After that, I heard nothing. I repeatedly went into the basement, seeing nothing each time. I began sobbing. The feeling of loss and helplessness is unbelievably painful. I spent the rest of the night at the top of the stairs. I would eventually finish the bottle of whiskey. I waited and I hoped that I would hear her again. I didn't though. My imagination tortured me as I wondered who or what the other voice was. The sun began to rise and I couldn't help but wonder if Meg could see it. The terror in her voice haunts me. I can only imagine where she is, what she's going through. It's been several hours since I heard the voices. I can only hope that I'll hear her again. It's been a year since that last time though. All I can do is sit at the top of the stairs every day and hope I hear her. And that's how they ended the story. So that one was really sad. That was a very well-written story. That's a no-sleep story, so that's a fictional story. But that's really fucking creepy, really sad. It definitely pulled on my heartstrings quite a bit in the last bit there when he heard her but couldn't find her. And then that creepy voice saying that she was his now, like what was it? I feel like both of these stories that I read tonight were very parallel universe stories, like alternate dimension stories, just creepy stories in general. They weren't really paranormal so much as they were like parallel universe, like just really creepy. It's like she went into another dimension and like she's still in the house, kind of like the Upside Down. If you guys watch Stranger Things, it's like she's still in the house, but he can't see her, but he can hear her sometimes. That's what the vibe I'm getting from that is, completely the Upside Down. So thank you so much for allowing me to read that story. That story was really good. It was really creepy and it just makes you think. I kind of like these stories as well. I love reading ghost stories and paranormal stories and creepy stories, but I really like the alternate universe, parallel universe stories as well. It's almost like the glitch in the Matrix stories. Those ones are really good too. So I'm loving these stories. I'm gonna try to find longer stories for the next couple of videos because I want to create probably about 2 or 3 videos a week up until spooky season. And then for the month of October, I'm gonna try to bang out as many videos as I possibly can. But it really all depends on if I can find stories that I think you guys will enjoy. So that's why sometimes there's a break in when I upload, because I just haven't found any stories that I think you guys would like, or I haven't gotten any submitted that I think you guys would like, or I just haven't gotten any submitted in general. I do have a couple in my email though that I'm gonna be getting to in the next couple of videos, and I do have some more Reddit stories saved as well. So I'm trying to find longer stories. So if you guys have any stories that you've come across or wanna share any stories with me, feel free to reach out over my email or send me a message over Instagram. I will definitely read your stories if they are appropriate for the channel and if they're written properly so that it's formatted properly and I can actually understand what's going on. If you've sent me stories in the past and I haven't gotten to your story, please send me another email and I'll bring it to the top of my chat so that I know where it is and I can read it. And if there's a problem with the story, then I can at least reach out to you and let you know that something went wrong and I don't understand the story and maybe it just needs to be restructured. I don't know. Just send me a message again if I haven't read your story and I will try to get to it as quickly as I possibly can. If you guys made it to the end of the video, please leave me your favorite fall emoji because we are almost at fall. It is like 4 weeks away. I am so excited. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye.